Robin Slim Show.
Robin Slim Show. This is Deana from Twisted Philly.
Deana, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I thought you guys were pranking me because the number you gave me wasn't going through.
It doesn't always Skype. It doesn't always work. It's shitty.
We have a magician in studio, and he was showing me card tricks, and I wasn't fast enough to answer your call because I was watching card tricks.
I had him mesmerized.
Yeah, he mesmerized me.
Is the official term for card tricks close magic?
Close-up magic. Close-up magic.
Close-up magic. Yeah, well, I figured if I do Skype, it would be a little bit better sound quality, so I'm sorry if that Skype call threw you off.
No, not at all. Deana, your show, Twisted Philly, how long have you been doing it for?
4 months.
That's it? Because it's so good.
Yeah.
I was doing prep. I had Slim listen to it. I told my girlfriend to check it out. It's a great show. Great concept. And is every show, like, themed? Like, because the one I listened to was the Three Heads.
Yeah, no. So every show is different. Really what I wanted to do was just create a podcast that, like, if I was going to listen to my favorite kind of stories, it would be just all kinds of weird, bizarre, twisted stuff. Or shit. Am I allowed to say shit?
Yes.
Yeah, anything you want.
Fuck
yeah,
no.
I mean, I know you guys do, but... So, you know, I love true crime, and I love the history around Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and, like, places like Eastern State Penitentiary, and... like Halloween activities, like just all kinds of weird stuff. So every episode is sort of a standalone story. There's a couple that sometimes take maybe more than one episode to tell, but for the most part, they're all standalone and they're all kind of weird.
Cool. Have you gotten a lot of good response from the show?
I have. That's what sort of blows me away the most because, you know, I haven't been doing this that long. But the response has been really terrific. Like, you know, I listen to it and think, all right, this is cool, I like it, but I wasn't really sure if other people would like it. And people have really responded to it, which is kind of amazing.
I didn't get to listen to, and I'm going to, I think, go and check out the Unknown Children episode. You said that was very hard, an episode to do?
Yeah, so, you know, and that's why it's not all true crime, because when you listen to it, you'll hear, like, I get really pissed off when I tell crime stories. I curse more in those episodes. Sometimes I cry in those episodes. Like, I'm a typical girl, right, man? I can't keep the emotions in. I'm just going to put it out there. But I get infuriated. Like, you know, who's protecting these kids? And
it was a child that was murdered by the parent, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a story of 2 different children. And, like, the fucked up thing about it is they weren't just murdered, like, they were abandoned. One, the news called The Boy in the Bag, and the other one was The Girl in the Trunk. Like, our city should not have stories about kids dumped in duffel bags or steamer trunks. Like, it's disgusting. So you hear me? I'm getting all upset now. Just
it's fucked up.
It is.
One of the reasons why I stopped researching so much news.
Also on the news, yeah.
When we first started the show, I would every day look at the news, but like every day it was like mother kills 2 kids, drowns them, drives car into river. It was like every day. Very.
Yeah, well, and the messed up thing about those 2 stories is that in both of those cases, the families were on the radar of the Department of Human Services. So one of them actually led to a lot of improvements in Philly in that capacity. And then I followed it up with like a ridiculous story about severed heads and a dude that stole a brain and then used the formaldehyde, right? Like the guy that used the formaldehyde from the brain to lace his pot so that he would have like a much more hallucinatory high. Like that episode was just ridiculous.
I was going to ask, is that gentleman still in jail? What was his name? Joshua Long.
It is. Joshua Long. Did you look at his picture?
No,
I didn't. I'm going to look it up right now.
Oh my God.
You said he looked like Megamind, right? The big fucking... The brain,
Dude,
I think. He smoked the brain.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So the guy smokes a brain, and then if you look at his picture, I have his picture on Twitter and on my website, but if you look at his picture, like most of his head is his forehead and his brain. His face is like teeny tiny, right? All wedged down in the front near his chin. And then he's got this giant cranium, which is just perfect because he's smoking a brain in his joint. Like, dude could have died from that shit. And he was in jail. And the crazy thing is the brain, they kept the brain in a Walmart bag. Like, of all things.
Maybe Joshua Long brain?
Yeah.
Put in brain, too, with the search? Because there's a lot of...
Brain.
There you go.
Man, I thought magicians were fucked up. I'm wrong. We're normal.
Penn Township man Joshua Lee stole.
Stole a bunch of shit.
Oh, they should have seen that one coming.
His parents are definitely siblings. Holy
Oh, they must
fuck.
they must be so proud. Really? Could you imagine? I'd be proud.
Wow. Where do you find your stories? Are you like a history buff yourself, or?
I am. Yeah. So a lot of the stories are ones that I already knew.
Okay.
So occasionally I'll get a recommendation or a request from a listener, and I definitely try to fulfill those requests. And especially the history ones, like that's just shit that I am so jazzed over. Philly history, as cool as it is that this was kind of the birthplace of America, right? And there's just so much with William Penn and Ben Franklin and George Washington and all that. Some of the history in Philly is messed up, like seriously messed up. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. So like the entire medical community of the United States was really founded here in Philadelphia. The first 2 medical colleges in the entire country started here in Philly. And so you had young dudes coming from all over the country to get medical degrees, and they didn't really have to do shit to get a degree. They had to be white and 24 and take a test. And, if you did those 3 things, which is basically nothing, you got to be a doctor. But there weren't enough cadavers. There weren't enough dead people
I think I heard
for them
this.
to practice on. So there was a huge body snatching ring in Philly in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Like Victorian Philly was way more fucked up than the news that you watch today. But the guy that was the leader of this ring, who was a doctor that worked at Jefferson Medical College,
Yes.
he actually wrote laws to prevent body snatching, and then he was running a body snatching ring, right? Because who's going to suspect that guy?
That's amazing.
Right?
I have heard that story.
That is badass.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's messed up.
As a magician, I can really actually appreciate the misdirection there. In a really kind of fucked up way, but I
think
appreciate
now it's just politicians like.
Oh
do that.
shit! Don't even go down that road.
Anthony Weiner. I think that was the guy that did a lot of fucked up shit.
Right.
Took down like brothels, but still was banging 16-year-olds.
Sending his dick to people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right. Right. So if your name is Wiener, maybe you don't send dick pics. Like it's just so stupid. So fucking stupid.
Sometimes you got to go for the low-hanging fruit, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
I love the first story in that show about the head with the handlebar mustache that was just displayed so people could identify the body, the severed head that was found, and how it ended up in a museum. That story was badass.
Thank you. Yeah, apparently Pennsylvania is also known for a shitload of severed heads, but
Severed head capital.
but like, who puts a friggin' severed head? It's not like it's the Mutter Museum, right? Like, you go to the Mutter Museum. You guys know what the Mutter Museum is?
Yeah.
All right, so you go to the Mutter. You expect to see severed heads.
Oh, motor.
Mutter.
Oh. I thought it was like a car museum. I was like, fuck
No,
it,
man,
it's
the Mutter Museum of Medical Oddities. You've never been there?
No. Where's that?
Oh,
Is that Philly?
It's in Philly on 22nd, and yeah, it's amazing. And so Dr. Mutter actually had this huge collection of all this crazy stuff, like specimens in jars. And when he was dying, he bequeathed it to the city of Philadelphia. And he was from Philly, and he actually started surgery in Philly. And now I'm getting all excited because I'm talking about history. So, I'm sorry because I'm talking real fast. But he bequeathed all this weird shit to Philly, and they built this museum. And initially, it was for educational purposes, and now it's just incredible. But there's a colon in there that's like the size of a German Shepherd, right? And there's the body, like the liver of conjoined twins, Chang and Ang, the most famous conjoined twins in history. There's like skeletons and skulls. There's testicles floating in jars. Like, you just can't even imagine what's in this place. It's
I got that
insane.
at home. Jeez. No, actually, my wife has that.
Slim's crawl space.
Right.
Our intern went on a fucking boar hunting expedition, and he said he cut one open that he killed, and it had like 12 fetal pigs just plopped out. I'm like, why don't you bring him back, dude?
That's the kind of shit you'll see at the Mutter. But this place is a coal museum in upstate Pennsylvania. He's putting a severed head on display in a coal museum.
That's amazing. I love too that you mentioned this society called the Black Hand Society, and I was like, what? That's like a badass name to pick for your evil society.
Right? And that shit's like 100 years old.
Fuck yeah.
See, that's what I love about doing this show, is that as crazy as you think things are today, like, we got nothing on the Victorians. We got nothing on the people that were building this country. They were so messed up. And, you didn't have, like, police and FBI and all that stuff. It was like the Keystone Cops back then. Nobody was paying attention to shit.
What was your favorite story that you've done on your show?
All right, so I probably have two. So my favorite lighthearted story is The Best Little Whorehouse in Twisted Philly. So I found this guidebook from the 1800s. It was called The Stranger's Guide to the Fancy, and it was basically a guidebook of Philly brothels. Yeah, no
Slim,
shit.
don't you have that on a Kindle?
Somewhere.
Right. Dude, there is an electronic version. I will email it to you when I'm done chatting with you, right? And the funny thing is, as you start reading it, the guy that wrote it is like, young men beware. These women and their wiles, they'll entrap you, right? So I'm like, oh man, this guy's like a Puritan or some shit. And then after you get through the preface, it is literally like, okay, Sally's whorehouse is on 5th and Bainbridge, and the ladies there are beautiful and talented and highly skilled. But, but like Rebecca's whorehouse, there are a bunch of dogs over there, so I highly encourage you to avoid it. Like, that's what this book is.
Wow.
And they would keep these things like in bars and taverns and at like check-in desks,
like the
right?
Gideons.
So,
it's like
it's like a
hotel
guide
Bible.
or something.
Yeah,
We gotta try to get a hold of that book and have Slambo read from it.
Yeah, he needs to read.
Yeah.
Segments
so
of that.
I'll email you the version of it, but the original one is in the library company in Philadelphia. So, like, you could actually go see it for real, but you got to wear gloves if you're going to hold it because it's old and it'll break and shit. So that's probably my favorite lighthearted one. My favorite heavy one is, I think it's my 6th episode. It's called The Day I Drove Past a Crime Scene. So, in 1996, a young woman named Amy Willard, who was from Delaware County, a suburb outside of Philly, was murdered. And I was stuck on the Blue Route. So, for your listeners, it's a huge highway that connects the northern Philly suburbs down to I-95. And I was stuck in a backup, and I was on my way to play practice, of all things. Yes, I'm a theater nerd. And I thought it was just an abandoned car. And, like, I'm sitting in my car, and I'm getting all pissed off, like, oh, I'm going to be late for play practice. And here, it was where she was murdered. So I did an episode about the day I drove past a crime scene, an Amy Willard story. And the thing that really sucked, murder sucks no matter what, right? But what really sucked about Amy's story is the guy that murdered her was in prison for murder in Las Vegas. And he got out on a technicality. He moved back to Philly to live with his mom and murdered 2 other women before he murdered Amy. And I don't know if you guys remember in the 90s, there was a lot of shit in the news about guys that were driving around pretending to be cops in unmarked cars.
Yeah.
And so like my ex-husband at the time, we were dating, and he was like, somebody tries to pull you over, you don't stop. Like, you call 911, you drive to a gas station, you drive somewhere where there's people, and, you just stay on the phone with the police until you get somewhere, because they thought it was somebody posing as a cop in an unmarked car.
Wow.
It turned out that it wasn't. What he was doing is, he would get girls as they were going off exit ramps, you slow down and shit, and he'd bump the back of their car. And so then they'd pull over, like, hey, man, you just bumped my car, let's exchange information. And then he hits them over the head with a tire iron. And,
wow.
Yeah, what happened to that young girl was horrible. And I think the reason it was so, like, just so friggin' hard for me to tell was, one, because I felt like a horrible, selfish bitch that day, driving past her car, like, bitching and complaining that I was going to be late where I was going, not realizing some chick just got murdered there.
Nah, that's all right.
And he found her at this bar, like, where he saw her and decided to follow her was at a bar that me and my girlfriends used to hang out at, like, every weekend.
I was mad once. I remember after school, I was trying to go to the deli and get some cheese fucking fries, and this motherfucker's taking forever crossing the road. My friend was trying to park, and he's honking. I'm like, get the fuck out of the way. And this dude was just stabbed and is trying to hold his intestines in.
Shit.
And I still got some fries. They were delicious. I did feel bad though when I realized. Yeah.
No, I still made it to the theater. Still did an awesome performance, but like you get older and you think about that shit and you're like, all right, I need to not be so selfish. But I went. The crazy thing was though, when I was doing that episode, So she was abducted there. She was murdered in North Philadelphia, and her body was dumped in a vacant lot, and these two little kids cutting through the lot. Like, imagine you're 10 years old and you see this naked murdered chick. Like, that shit stays with you for the rest of your life.
Fuck.
But I think the other reason I can't do too many true crime is because I just get sucked into it. Like, I'm like, all right, I got to drive up to 16th and Indiana and check out the abandoned lot where her body was dumped. And it's like, yeah, it's, not a great neighborhood. Maybe I don't need to go check out where her body was dumped. Maybe I need to let somebody know where I am just in case, anything stupid happens. So, but yeah, they're like my two favorite.
Cool.
So when you do these stories, you kind of conduct your own investigation into them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm working on a series of episodes now about a young girl that was murdered recently. She was from Abington, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you guys have heard about Grace Packer.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that story's really fucked up. She was murdered by her adoptive mother and her mother's boyfriend. And her adoptive mother was an adoption supervisor for Northampton County, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Damn.
Talk about abuse of power.
Holy fuck.
But I'm submitting PA right to know forms to get court records and shit. I don't know if anybody's gonna give them to me, but I'm submitting this shit. So, and then in between those heavy episodes, I talk about funny shit poison rings and severed heads and whorehouses.
How much time do you put into research on an episode?
I can put in anywhere between days to weeks. It's very easy to go down a rabbit hole. The episode about Philly's unknown children, the two children that were killed by their families. I was trying to find out if one of the stepfathers of one of the children was actually ever convicted, and I couldn't find anything. And I'm calling, Philadelphia police stations, and I'm calling district attorneys' offices, and the case is kind of old. That's the other thing too. If I'm doing stuff that's kind of old, sometimes it's hard to find. I'm able to find more information about shit that happened 100 years ago sometimes than I am able to find out stuff that happened 30 years ago, which is really strange.
Have you ever, doing a show that, is taking you longer to research, do you do other shows in between, or do you just wait to put one out? Wow.
No, I try to stick with the consistency of an episode every week. I think that, I think that's important. If they're digging what I'm putting out, right? I don't want them waiting for weeks until I get another episode out. And I had some time off from work over the holidays, so I was like, dude, I'm getting episodes in the can so that as I'm researching a longer story, nobody's going to be waiting for stuff. I got episodes ready to go.
Oh, okay. So you got them on the back burner. That's cool. That's cool.
Do you do anything? Do you do any recent stories, or you focus on older stories?
Most of what I've done is probably 20. I think the most recent is probably about 20 years old. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, those cases sometimes are a little bit easier because they, especially if it's true crime, because they have closure, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, this is a missing person and nobody knows where the fuck they are. We know this asshole killed this person and his ass is rotting in jail, and we can all feel really good about that because he's a dick. The other stuff though, the history and stuff about the Mutter Museum and Eastern State Penitentiary, that stuff's just, those are the episodes that are tough for me too sometimes because I love those places so much that I could probably put out a 3-hour episode about that, but I don't know if anybody wants to listen to me talk about the Eastern State Penitentiary for 3 hours. So it's I got to figure out, all right, how do I condense this down to a 45 minute clip for people, because attention spans are, they're finite things, right? Like you guys, you have a long show, but you have so many different guests to keep people entertained and excited, and you change it up a little bit.
Yeah. What I saw too. Are you an author or just a writer?
I guess an author would be a fancier way of saying
I didn't know if you had books, because I heard you say you had a screenplay. I didn't know if you just wrote screenplays or if you had books out there.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So I've always written fiction. I just never had the balls to do anything with it until the last year. So I have one short up on Amazon, and what I do is, I have Patreon. You guys know, a lot of podcasters have Patreon for people who might want to throw a buck or something at you to help support the show. So what I do is my Patreon reward are my short fiction. So I give them away to my Patreon subscribers before I put them up on Amazon. And one of the stories I wrote, I rewrote it as a screenplay, and just for for shits and giggles, I'm like, I'm going to submit this to some film festivals. And, dude, like, somebody accepted it, and it's competing in a film festival, and I'm heading up to Watertown, New York this weekend.
That's
for the
cool.
For the Snowtown Film Festival.
Can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, it's called Cat Sitting. It's a thriller, of course. It's got to be dark and twisted and fucked up. It's about this mother and daughter that are like, going to somebody's house, taking care of their pets while their friends are on vacation, and the daughter thinks there's somebody in the house, and so the mom checks the house, and she's like, nope, everything's cool, there's nobody here, everything's fine, there's nothing wrong. And so they go back again, and they go back again, and the kid feels better. Hey, I trust my mom. She checked everything out. So she's like, all right, Mom, I'm cool. I got this. I'll go take care of these animals. And then she doesn't come out of the house.
Did the cats do it?
No, the mom did a really shitty job checking the basement. Yeah, it's always the mother's fault.
Yeah, that's why Slim's all fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an only Jewish child. I can attest to that. Yeah, the mother's problem.
Like, Jewish guilt and Catholic guilt, man, they are like identical.
Oh yeah.
I've talked about religious guilt over the years. Like, sometimes that shit never goes away. Never goes away.
Like, I grew up Catholic when I was little, but then I gave that shit up for Lent. So,
the longest Lent in history.
Mike, were you raised religious?
Yeah, up until like.
No, not really religious. It was like, you're Italian, you live in Philly, you go to Catholic church, and and then when I was like 15, 16, I'm like, yeah, I'm just not down with this. Like, I'm down with figuring out what I'm down with. And but that guilt, though, man, like that Catholic guilt, that shit sticks with you even when you're an adult.
Yeah.
That shit they do. Well, any of that stupid religious guilt, that you
that and the rich food. They feed you the rich food to like lull you into that like half asleep thing. Then they lay the guilt on top, and you're just totally fucked at that point.
Yep.
You can't help it.
It's like quicksand. You can't pull yourself up out of that shit.
I was wondering, do you script your podcast?
I do not.
Okay.
I write an outline, so I'll have like discussion points for myself to make sure that I stay on track. Because if you listen to the show, I know you listen to the 3-head one. Like I can go off on a tangent a little bit, as if you can't tell. So no, I have an outline, and like what I do is sometimes I'll take a picture of a friend. Like I record in a walk-in closet because it's padded with all kinds of shoes and clothes and shit, and it's the quietest place in my house. And so I'll take a picture of a friend and hang it up in front of me where I'm standing with my microphone, so it feels like I'm talking to somebody.
That's cool. Yeah, because I don't think I could do a solo podcast.
Nah, I always said that would be so hard. You've had friends that have tried and just.
I know I couldn't do it.
Nah.
No way. Yeah.
That's what's so cool right now. I'm like, holy shit, I'm actually talking to people. Instead of just talking by myself.
Well, I was going to ask, I was writing if you ever had interviews, but then I heard at the end of that show where you had that journalist from Chicago, Justin Glaw, on. That was cool that you threw that in there. Like.
Yeah, he was a cool dude. I've got some interviews coming up in some future shows. Actually, tomorrow after work, I'm interviewing a woman named Irene Baker. She wrote a book recently called 100 Things to Do in Philadelphia Before You Die.
Cool.
It's like this cool little guidebook for people that come to Philly, but what I like about it is, like a diehard Philadelphian like me who's grown up here my whole life and feels like I've done everything and I know everything. She's got some shit in there that I didn't know we had.
That's cool.
So, yeah. So, and like as I read it, I'm like, man, this chick wrote it as if she can imagine me standing in Philly with this thing in my hand. Like, all right, I'm going to go from here to here. So it's very cultivated the way she wrote it. So that show is going to be probably entirely an interview. So yeah, I mix it up. I try to make everything a little bit different.
Awesome. Deana, we have to wrap this up, but tell everybody where they can find you and your show.
Yeah, so it's Twisted Philly. You can find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and I'm on Twitter at @Twisted_Philly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Dude, thanks for having me on.
Not a problem.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.